I never imagined the man who once rubbed my cold feet under the covers would one day call me unnecessary. We weren't exciting. We weren't glamorous. But we were steady. I thought that mattered. When I met Nathan, he was a high school math teacher with slightly crooked glasses and a smile that only showed when he talked about constellations. I was working at the library, still learning how to breathe after losing my brother. We were both broken in quiet ways. We fit. We shared 20 years of late-night grocery runs, leaking faucets, and coupon clipping. Our home in upstate New York wasn't much, peeling paint, drafty windows, but it held us. It held me. And for most of that time, I held on to him. Then one Tuesday in March, he walked in holding a gallon of milk and a scratch-off ticket. He forgot the eggs. I remember being annoyed. We scratched it at the kitchen table. I wasn't paying attention, folding a dish towel, half listening, until he stopped breathing, stood up slowly, eyes wide. 10 million, he whispered. I laughed, thought he was joking, but he wasn't. By Friday, it was confirmed. After taxes, over 6 million. Just like that, the life we built was overwritten. I imagined we'd plan together. Maybe travel. Start something simple. I had this silly dream of opening a second-hand bookstore in Vermont. Tiny. Quiet. With a tea kettle always on. I thought we'd celebrate. Maybe even cry from joy. Maybe we'd finally hold hands the way we used to in parking lots. But Nathan changed before the ink dried. He quit his job the next morning. Didn't tell me. I found out when his boss called, asking about a retirement party. His old sweaters disappeared from the laundry, replaced by shirts with stiff collars and names I didn't recognize. He started browsing real estate listings like he was flipping through a magazine. Drank more. Laughed louder. With people I didn't know. One night, I heard him on the phone, laughing in a way that sounded more like release than joy. Finally free, he said. I should have confronted him. I didn't. Not yet. The blow came on a Sunday morning. I made French toast, his favorite. He came downstairs in a tailored suit I'd never seen. I'm rich now, he said, adjusting his cufflinks. I don't need a housewife anymore. I stared at him, waiting for the punchline. He sipped his coffee. No smile. No twitch. You were fine when we had nothing, he continued, but I'm not living like a schoolteacher anymore. You don't fit that life. Just like that. No argument. No apology. No pain in his eyes. Just math. He gave me 30 days to leave. Like it was a lease. The man who once called me his anchor was now unmoored and saw me as dead weight. I didn't cry. Not then. Not in front of him. I cleaned the kitchen slowly. Every motion deliberate. Like a ritual to keep from shattering. I walked through the house like a guest. Touching furniture I'd saved for. Bookshelves I built. Pillows I stitched by hand. And still, his voice echoed from the other room, talking about renovations. Do you think the foyer can fit a grand piano? He didn't play piano. He never would. But now he could afford to pretend. At night, he invited strangers over. Men with 2 white teeth. Women who laughed like they were auditioning. He told me to make myself scarce. So I would. I'd retreat upstairs, tea burning my hands, door locked, jaw clenched. And still, every morning, I made the bed. Still folded his shirts when they made it to the hamper. Until one day, I didn't. I let them wrinkle on the floor. I let the silence hang. I watched him walk past me like I wasn't there, like I was already gone. But I wasn't. Not yet. I started packing quietly. Not everything. Just the things that felt like mine. A box of books I'd read more than once. Letters from my mother, some yellowed at the edges. The little painting Nathan's mother gave me before she passed. 2 doves in watercolor, soft and gentle. He probably forgot it ever existed. I wasn't leaving. Not yet. But I needed to know what I'd take when it was time. He walked through the house like a king, but acted like I was already a ghost. I could hear him from the other room, on the phone, talking about contractors, custom marble, a wine cellar. He never drank wine until it became a status symbol. I stopped making dinner. He didn't notice. He started sleeping in the guest room. I didn't ask him to. He was carving me out of the space like I was wallpaper that didn't fit the remodel. The first woman he brought home during the day clicked through the hardwood in stilettos like she wanted the floor to remember her. She didn't look at me. Not once. She's helping me with the upgrade, he said. Upgrade. As if I was a cracked tile being replaced. That night, I made tea with shaking hands and locked the bedroom door. I sat in bed and did something I hadn't done in years. I wrote. Not fiction. Not journaling. Just facts. In an old notebook tucked in my nightstand, I began tracking him. Dates. Conversations. New names. Strange expenses. Sudden shifts in behavior. Not because I had a plan. Not yet. But because I needed the truth to have weight. Because I refused to let him rewrite our story like I was never part of it. After 2 weeks, I reached out to Marka. She was a retired accountant I knew from church. Quiet. Sharp. The kind of woman who could balance a budget and detect a lie in the same breath. I didn't tell her everything. Just enough. Enough for her to lean forward and offer to help. We sat at her kitchen table with coffee and old receipts. She didn't gasp. She didn't judge. She listened. And then she said something that landed in my chest like a bell. Men like Nathan don't change. Money doesn't corrupt them, it gives them permission. That line echoed for days. Maybe the man I married was always there, hidden in politeness, dressed in practicality. Maybe I just wasn't worth the mask slipping before now. We went through our old bank statements, tax filings, credit reports. Nathan had started opening new accounts in his name only. Not illegal, but intentional. He wasn't hiding. He just didn't think I'd notice. Or fight back. Marka said something else that stayed with me. Don't let him know you're watching. That's when men like him get sloppy. Or dangerous. I nodded. Scared. But not frozen. Not anymore. One morning, I walked into the kitchen and found a woman wearing my robe. Not the one in the laundry. Not the one from the closet. The one I kept tucked away, folded in the linen drawer. She was pouring coffee like she lived there. Like I never did. Oh hey, she said, brushing dyed auburn hair behind her ear. You must be the ex-wife. I didn't answer. I just walked out. Later that day, Nathan stopped me in the hallway. Don't make this harder than it has to be, he said. His voice was flat, like he was negotiating a utility bill. You'll land on your feet. You always do. That's when it hit me. He wasn't angry. He wasn't even vindictive. He just didn't see me anymore. Not as a person. Not as someone with weight, with worth. I was a problem. A loose end. A smudge on the window of his new life. But I knew something he didn't. He thought I was disappearing. He thought I was quietly folding. But I was gathering, collecting, arming myself with history and future. I visited the storage unit we hadn't opened in years, pulled out a metal lockbox from the bottom shelf. Inside were documents, certificates, early receipts, from a business idea I once had, years ago. Before Nathan told me it was a distraction, I kept everything. Even after I shut it down, it was mine. And now, it felt like proof. I called Marka that night. Do you think we could start again? I asked. There was a pause. Then, you thinking of making a move? I think I already did, I said. Across the house, I watched Nathan and his new girlfriend laughing. She wore my robe. He sat where I used to. But I didn't feel anger. I felt ready. I started at a kitchen table. Not the one in our house. The one that used to be ours. I couldn't sit there anymore. Not while it smelled like his cologne and someone else's perfume. This was Marka's kitchen. Warm light. Mismatched mugs. A window that looked out over a garden of herbs she talked to like old friends. This was where I built the beginning of my second life. Quietly. Without announcement. Without permission. The business idea had started as a daydream years ago. Before life hardened me. Before Nathan started calling my hobbies cute and my goals unrealistic. Custom-made journals. Memory boxes. Cards you could keep forever. I called it Kindred Pages. He convinced me to shut it down before it began. Said the money wasn't worth the stress. Said I should focus on what I was good at. What he meant was, focus on staying small. But I'd kept everything. The vendor lists. The product sketches. Even the logo. Buried, but not broken. Marka introduced me to Sonia, a former print shop manager who'd started freelancing after the company downsized. Her hands were ink-stained. Her laugh was soft. But her eyes? Sharp. Measuring. I liked her immediately. She offered to help me create new samples. We worked in the basement of the community center, sometimes with a space heater buzzing, sometimes in silence, sometimes with music from the 70s. No one knew. Not Nathan. Not anyone in our old circle. That felt important. Meanwhile, Nathan spiraled upward. Or maybe downward, depending on your angle. He bought a car he didn't know how to drive. Wrecked it. Laughed. Invested in something called crypto art because a man in a cigar lounge told him to. I overheard him bragging to a neighbor about buying a Florida condo he'd never even seen. He wore sunglasses indoors. Started saying, portfolio, unironically. Called himself a visionary investor. To everyone else, he looked successful. But to me, he looked hollow. Like someone cosplaying confidence. Then the listing went up. Our house. He never told me. I saw it online. Professional photos. Polished floors. Angled lighting. There was my quilt, still folded at the foot of the bed like I might come back and tuck it in myself. He hadn't even removed it. The day a couple came for a tour, I sat on the porch swing, pretending to read. The wife smiled at me, awkward, unsure. She's just the tenant, the realtor whispered. Moving out soon. I wanted to scream. But I just turned a page I wasn't reading and let the breeze answer for me. That night, Marka slid a paper across the kitchen table. A single-page printout. You said you had a name for the business already. I blinked. Read the header. Kindred Pages, LLC. My name. At the bottom. Registered. Real. Mine. I cried. Not because I was broken, but because I remembered who I'd been before Nathan shrunk me to fit his idea of a life. I moved out 2 days before his deadline. Not because he said to. Because I didn't need to stay. He didn't offer to help. He didn't ask where I was going. He tossed his keys in a crystal bowl and muttered, "Take care." I stayed with Marka. Guest room. Thin mattress. Peaceful silence. I started working on the business during the day and writing out goals at night. Not dreams. Goals. Small. Clear. Measurable. Finish samples. Build website. Get 1 real sale. By Sunday, the site was live. Warm-toned. Gentle fonts. Quiet branding. No pictures of me. No names. Just the work. A few photos of the handmade journals. Cards tied in twine. Memory boxes with little drawers. Nothing loud. Just true. And then something happened. A woman I vaguely remembered from town, now living in California, posted a video. She had ordered a custom journal for her mother's birthday. Filmed herself unboxing it. "You can tell the person who made this put love into every inch," she whispered, tearing up. Orders started coming in. Too many for just me. Sonia and I stayed up past midnight, laughing, cursing the glue sticks, and marveling at the sudden momentum. I didn't feel overwhelmed. I felt alive. Marka warned me gently. Don't let success trick you into growing too fast. Sustainability is power. I listened. I always listen now. Then Nathan called. Once. Left a voicemail. Just checking you got all your stuff. Oh, and the realtor said to clear the counters. Something about a blue kettle. I didn't reply. But I did drive by. Just once. Parked across the street in Marka's car. Watched shadows move behind the windows. A party, maybe. Strangers. In what used to be my home. I thought it would hurt. It didn't. It felt like freedom. The house disappeared from the listing site. No fanfare. No announcement. Just gone. I assumed he sold it. Figured he'd moved on. Figured I had too. Until the call came. Not from him. From Nancy Price. A realtor I hadn't spoken to in years. I heard a rumor, she said. You might be looking to invest in real estate. I didn't confirm. Not right away. I sipped my tea. Then quietly said, I might be. We met at a quiet cafe that Thursday. She wore a beige trench coat, her tablet already out, papers stacked like a deck of secrets. You're not just browsing, are you? She asked, eyes sharp. No, I said. I'm ready. And I want something with history, she smiled. Most people ask for new, for modern, for low maintenance. But I didn't want easy. I wanted meaning. I wanted something with bones. She laid out the listings. Townhomes, cabins, even a converted barn. I skimmed, then leaned in. There's a specific property I'm interested in. It was under contract, but I heard the buyer's financing fell through. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Which one? I met her gaze. 47 South Wilton Avenue. She blinked. Nathan's place. I didn't flinch. I lived there for 20 years. Silence filled the space between us. Not uncomfortable. Just waited. Full of knowing. Kate, she said carefully, why would you want to go back? After everything. I stirred my tea. Because the house was never the problem. He was. She didn't argue. Just nodded, opened her email, and started typing. 2 days later, she called. You were right. The buyer pulled out. It's back on the market. Quietly. Quietly, I repeated. He's trying to avoid headlines, she said. Slashed the price. He's desperate. I drove out that Sunday. Parked 2 houses down. The lawn was overgrown. Shutters chipped. A broken garden light dangled like a loose tooth. Nathan had tried to fill the house with noise. With parties. With wealth. But without care, even mansions rot. Nancy met me at the door. Handed me the key. I stepped inside. It smelled like cologne, dust, and something forgotten. The furniture was gone. The warmth even more so. But I didn't see loss. Not anymore. I saw opportunity. I want it, I said. Nancy blinked. You're sure? I'm not buying a memory, I replied. I'm buying a stage. And I know exactly what to do with it. By Tuesday, the offer was in. By Friday, it was accepted. No counter. No hesitation. Just a quiet surrender. Nancy called me. He didn't even argue, she said. He just wanted out. I didn't smile. Not yet. That came later. When I stood in the foyer, keys in hand, and whispered to the empty house, this time, it belongs to someone who won't throw it away. Moving back and felt surreal. Not because it hurt, but because it didn't. I wore gloves, not for warmth, but for grip. Dust clung to every surface. Spiderwebs curled in corners like forgotten grudges. I wasn't intimidated. I'd scrubbed worse. Sonia and I walked the halls together. She paused at the fireplace. He tried to install a mirrored sculpture here, she said. I laughed softly. This place has bones, she continued. She just needs someone who won't smother her. I know what she needs, I said. She needs a purpose. That week, I drew up the plan. Not just a home. A studio. A boutique. A creative haven. A living, breathing space for kindred pages. No strip mall. No fluorescent lights. Something different. Something that made people feel like they'd stepped into a storybook. Custom journals. Memory boxes. Calligraphy classes. Seasonal workshops in the sunroom. Writing circles by the fire. Marka helped with the financials. Sonia brought in artisans. Mostly women. Mostly like me. People trying to rebuild something of their own. We painted the walls honey gold and soft plum. Ripped up the rugs. Polished the wood beneath. Every drawer. Every chipped baseboard. I touched it all. I wasn't reclaiming the space. I was rewriting it. Then I did something small, but bold. Just inside the entryway, I hung a framed note. It read, "This space was once filled with silence and absence. Now it welcomes stories, voices, and beginnings. Welcome home, Kay." Opening day was mid-October. No grand announcement. Just word of mouth. A soft post on Instagram. An open invitation to the local paper. The reporter, a young woman named Trina, fell in love. She interviewed me for an hour. Took photos. Asked real questions. She called it From Heartbreak to Handmade, the woman who turned her ex-husband's mansion into a community jewel. I didn't expect the headline, but I smiled when I saw it. Nathan did too. Just not for the same reason. The voicemail came that Saturday. Marka walked into the kitchen holding her phone like it was a grenade. "He knows." I exhaled. "Let him." The transcript read, "You really think this is funny? Buying my house, turning it into some kind of hobby club? Do you have any idea how this makes me look?" I didn't reply. Just deleted the message. And went back to prepping for a memory journal workshop. Across the room, two women were laughing softly as they picked out handmade recipe books. I smiled and said, "Let me know if you need anything." The article spread faster than I expected. I thought it would be a small piece, a quiet write-up in the community section. Instead, it became a spark. A lifestyle blog picked it up. Then a podcast. Not gossip. Not scandal. Inspiration. Suddenly, people were reaching out. Not to gawk, but to say thank you. Letters. Emails. Women showing up just to walk through the door. Not to shop. Just to breathe. One was a retired nurse. Another, a widow who whispered, "You reminded me I still have more chapters to write." I wasn't expecting that. I didn't build this place to be seen. I built it to heal. But now, it was doing both. I didn't talk about Nathan anymore. His name didn't sting. It just existed. Like a stain that had already faded in the wash. People still brought him up. Curious whispers. The occasional "Wait, you're the one from that article," but I didn't correct them. I just smiled. Because this story, mine, was no longer about him. Then one afternoon, the bell above the studio door chimed. I looked up, expecting Sonia or Marka. It was him. Nathan. He looked different. Thinner. Tired. Like someone who hadn't slept right in months. His coat was too heavy for the weather. His eyes scanned the room like he didn't recognize it. Like he was still trying to decide if this was real. I didn't flinch. I didn't speak. I folded a napkin over a basket of dried lavender and said, "We're about to start a class." He stood in the middle of the room like he was waiting for the floor to give way. "I didn't think you'd actually buy it," he said finally. "I didn't do it to spite you," I replied. He nodded slowly. "I know," he said. That's the worst part. He turned to leave, paused at the door. You were never just a housewife, he said. I just didn't know how to handle someone who didn't need me. And then he left, just like that. Behind me, someone whispered, Are we still starting? I turned, smiling softly. Yes, I said. Right now. That winter came gently. Snow settled like lace over the garden we'd replanted from scratch. The days were shorter, but they didn't feel darker. I'd close up the shop each night with the same rhythm I used to fold laundry. Quiet, intentional, at peace. Kindred Pages was growing. Not wildly, not recklessly, wisely. We partnered with a local women's shelter, offering free journaling classes once a month. Sonia took on 2 apprentices. Marka finally retired, really retired, though she still dropped by on Fridays to make sure I wasn't undercharging for custom embossing. One day, I stood in the doorway of what used to be our old bedroom. Now it was a reading room, lined with velvet chairs and low shelves. Soft light, wide windows. A woman sat curled in the corner. Silver hair, knit hat, writing steadily in a journal. When she saw me, she smiled. I didn't think I'd ever write again, she said. But something about this place, it reminds you who you were before life tried to make you forget. I sat beside her, hands folded in my lap. That's exactly why I built it. I don't know where Nathan is now. Someone said he moved in with a cousin. Someone else said he's managing a warehouse 3 states away. It doesn't matter. His story ended for me a long time ago. I keep the keys to the mansion on a handmade hook in the kitchen. Every time I pick them up, I don't think about what I lost. I think about what I refuse to give up. My voice. My name. My power. People say revenge is sweet, but I found something better. Peace. The last room I touched was the one I avoided the most. The bathroom at the end of the upstairs hallway. Small. Echoing. Always cold, even in summer. It was where I sat the night he told me to leave, where I stared at myself in the mirror trying to find the woman he had erased. Back then, my reflection looked scared. Smaller than I remembered. Like I'd folded myself too many times to fit into someone else's story. Now, standing there again, I saw someone else. My shoulders didn't slump anymore. My mouth wasn't tight with silence. I looked whole. Not unscarred, but unbroken. I repainted the walls in soft lilac, added gold hooks for hanging robes, placed a vase of dried lavender on the windowsill that used to fog with winter frost. When the sun hit it just right, it looked like a place you could exhale in. That mattered to me. I called Sonia the night before our 1-year anniversary. 1 year since the relaunch. 1 year since the studio opened. 1 year since I signed the papers and said, without shaking, I want this house. We sat on the porch swing, a bottle of wine between us, mismatched blankets over our knees. Can you believe it? She whispered. What you've done? I didn't answer right away. Not because I didn't believe it, but because I'd finally learned not to question it. This wasn't luck. This was built. By hand. By heart. By choice. The next morning, I walked through the house slowly. Light spilled across the hardwood like a welcome mat. Voices murmured in the sunroom, a writing circle, early as always. The kettle whistled gently in the kitchen. Lavender and ink in the air. Someone laughed. I paused in the doorway of the front room. The foyer. The same place I once stood with nothing but a key and a chest full of unfinished grief. Now it was a landing point. A beginning. A threshold not for endings, but for starts. We held our anniversary event quietly. No banners. No influencers. Just chairs. Journals. Stories. A mother read a letter to her daughter. A teenage boy wrote a poem about his grandmother's hands. A woman in her 70s whispered that she hadn't spoken her truth aloud in decades until that night. People clapped, cried, hugged, and no one left feeling small. Later that evening, after the last light was turned off, I sat alone in the garden. The one we'd reclaimed. The one that once held weeds and broken lights. Now it bloomed. Not perfectly. Not all at once. But beautifully. And isn't that the way we heal? A week later, a letter arrived. Not email. Not a DM. Paper. Real. Creased. Handwritten. From a woman in Michigan. She'd read about the studio online. Said her daughter had ordered a journal and hadn't stopped writing since. The letter ended with, "You gave her something we never knew how to give her, space to tell her story." I pinned it to the corkboard in my office. Not for praise. For purpose. To remind myself that silence may be comfortable, but it's never the same as peace. I still get asked if I ever hear from Nathan. The answer is, not really. One voicemail. Months ago. He said he was glad I was doing well. I didn't save it. I didn't respond. Because the truth is, he's not the point anymore. This space is. The people who walk through its doors. The ones who carry old wounds and leave a little lighter. The stories written in crooked cursive. The laughter in the workshop. The smell of sage and ink and cinnamon tea. This was never about revenge. It was about return. To myself. To who I was before the shrinking. Before the silence. Before the man who mistook my softness for weakness and my loyalty for limitation. I didn't rebuild this house to prove anything to him. I rebuilt it because I deserved to take up space. And now I do. Fully. Unapologetically. And with open arms. Some stories don't end with closure. They end with continuation. This isn't the last chapter. Just the first one I wrote entirely on my own.